Welcome to the first ever Virgin Food Fest, guys. Thanks for being here, cramming into the Doodle Bar this morning. My name's Ben, and I'm going to be looking after you guys this morning and through the 3 panel sessions today with a brilliant set of people who are going to come and share all their tips and tricks around food startups. I work with Virgin Startup as a business advisor, and we run workshops every week, and I've seen a couple of you before. And every workshop we do, we have about 20 people coming in looking for loans, and we run through the business planning and the finances. And out of those 20, almost every week, 4 or 5 are food startups. So it's a big trend that we're seeing at Virgin Startup. My history with food startups has been the main experience I had was living on an island in Fiji for 5 years. And out there we lived off coconuts, and we had spears, and we had a BlackBerry phone, and we ran an ecotourism and restaurant business for 5 years. So that's where I learnt my trade. And the reason Virgin Startup has got going is because they really wanted to build a set of opportunities, not just funding, but mentoring as well, and business advice for startups all around the country. But there's a big scene going on in London, which you're all part of. The big figures, which are always interesting, the IGD UK food industry is going to be worth 206 billion in 2018. So it's a big jump since in the last year. It's going up by 20%. But at the grassroots where we're all working, which is much more relevant, Virgin Startup has given out over 200 loans to date since it started at the end of last year. Average loan is £7,000. But they go up to £25,000, but the average loan going out at £7,000, so it's £1.5 million that's gone out as loans already. The really interesting part of Virgin Startup, I think, is what happens after people get the loans. So there's this brilliant matchmaking dating algorithm, which matches those that get the loans with mentors who you get 15 hours time with over 12 months. They've already delivered over 3,000 hours of mentoring time to startups. So that's really exciting. Plus all the PR, blogging, marketing opportunities that's spinning off, and there's loads of stuff happening. Now, you guys are all involved or about to start a food business. So there's lots of time in between these sessions to connect with each other. But the first panel this morning, we've got 3 guys here who've got, which I think probably reflect the 3 most important pillars of food civilization. We've got finance, legal, and burritos. So we've got Clive who's going to tell you about the money, how to do it. And then we've got Nick, who's from Poncho 8, number 8, which is a burrito business, which some of you may have tried. And we've got John from Nabarro, which is legal tips and tricks. And I'm going to let these guys share their stories with you for a few minutes each, and then you can all fire a load of questions in their direction. So, Nick.
Morning, guys. Can you hear me okay? Is the mic working? Yeah. So my name's Nick Burkett. I run a business called Poncho 8 with my best mate, Frank. We have a chain of burrito shops across London, and we think we do the best burritos in London. We've got 6 shops, and we're opening 2 more very soon, one in Selfridges on Oxford Street and one in Canary Wharf. We started in 2009. Frank started the business. He went across America, saw all these amazing burrito bars, and thought there was a gap in the market in London. So he left his job at Goldman Sachs, started the first one, and then I joined him a few months later. So we've been working together for about 5 years now. We've now got a multi-million-pound business. We've got a team of about 80 people and a thriving brand, and we love it. So I was asked today to talk about, I think it's from taking it from idea through to inception. But rather than just talking about our story, I've had to think about the advice that I'd like to have been given when I was at idea stage, and then break the audience down into the 4 types of people I think are here, and give specific advice as to what I would do next if I was in your position. So I'll just scoot through the general advice first. So if you're at idea stage now, we have a lot of people who come and see us and say, I've just got an idea, that's all I've got. And what I'd say to that is every business has started as an idea, so don't think that you're different from anyone else. So whether it's Heston Blumenthal or Gizzy Erskine or whoever it is, they all started at your stage. And all it takes to get it to the next level is to have confidence in yourself and to share your idea with as many people as possible. I'm a big advocate of sharing things rather than keeping it to yourself. The second thing I'd say is to just do something. All too often you see guys who sit on an idea and maybe tell like their best mate but nobody else. If you've got an idea for a fantastic burrito brand, then make some burritos, take them out, sell them, give them to your friends, get feedback. The more feedback you get, the more legs your idea has, and the more it will become a reality. The next thing I think I'd say, and almost the most important thing, is that the idea is quite important, but the execution is essential. And that comes back to sharing it with people, and it comes back to getting feedback and doing something. Execution is also based on incredible detail. So the level of knowledge and detail that Frank and I have over our business, from the thickness of steel in the kitchen through to the car machine processing time, through to the type of plastic you have to use on the different labels in the store, is something we've really, really built up. And the more you know about the intricate detail of your business, the better your execution will be, and therefore the better you'll be relative to your competitors. So I'd really focus on execution. Be aware that you're going to make loads and loads of mistakes. This is something that comes up in every one of these talks you ever go to, and it sounds a bit trite. But relating it to something that Richard Branson says, which he often talks about, is to protect your downside. So at your stage now, I'd really, really recommend getting someone with experience behind you, be it as an investor, be it as a board member, or both, and really listening to what they say. Because they'll save you loads of time and loads of money, and it'll make you go faster. We're all unique and different people, but we're definitely all going to suffer from the same problems in this industry. So when you hear someone say, I had this problem, then listen to them, write it down, and then write a plan for how you're going to try and prevent your business suffering the same problem. I find it really frustrating when we see people at early stage, we give them advice, we say, make sure this doesn't happen, and then they make it happen, and they suffer from the same problem that we've told them about, and we've told them how they could avoid it. It's really frustrating. Related to that, focus on the important stuff. Again, really as early stage guys that come and see us, they're always talking about the logo or the brand colors or the name, which is kind of fun stuff, but it's not that important. Again, I'd focus on the execution. So how are you going to get the product to the customer? How are you going to keep it at the right temperature? How do you keep the experience perfect? And then finally, I'd come back to the kind of general thing that we always come back to, which is doing what feels right. Always you're presented with these new decisions that you're not quite sure how to handle. And you can share your ideas, as we said, and you can ask people for advice, but you've got to come back to what feels right. And by doing that, you build a business in your own vision, and you build a business that you're happy to run. So I'd really advocate that. So those are the kind of general thoughts that I had, and then to move quickly through the kind of 4 types of people I thought would be here. So the first type, I think, are probably guys who haven't got an idea as such, but want to get into food somehow. And for those guys, I'd say, again, meet as many people as possible in the industry, so be it buyers, be it chefs, be it business owners, and spend time with everyone. And then as you do that, you'll find the niche that rings true with you, and then spend more time in that niche. The second type are those guys that have got a million ideas, but aren't quite sure which one to go with. And for those guys, I'd say write all the ideas down, pick the one that you think is your favorite, or just pick one by tossing a coin, and spend 2 weeks on it. Spend the full 2 weeks, and if it feels right, then keep going with it. And if it doesn't, then bench it forever, probably, and then work on the next one. And eventually, you'll find the idea that really keeps you up at night and really gets you smiling. The third type are the guys that have got this idea, like you really want to work on this idea, but you're not quite sure what to do next. And I go back to the general advice is to share the idea with as many people as possible, share it with experienced industry guys, and take their advice, but also ask them really specific questions. So too often, again, people say, what should I do next? It's a really broad question, and you get broad answers back, which aren't that useful. Much better to say to these guys, look, this is my idea, this is how much money I need, this is how I'm going to raise it, and this is my time plan. What do you think about this? And you get specific answers back that can really drive specific action, which is really, really useful. And then the final type of person I think is probably here are those guys that have got the idea, and they know exactly how they want to execute it, but they just haven't got any cash. And almost that's the best position, because there's loads and loads of money out there. Sometimes it's frustrating to try and find it, but again, I'd go back to, it comes down to your confidence in your idea, and it comes back to you really selling yourself and selling the idea and sharing it. So go and meet as many people as possible. If people are saying no to you, they're just not right for you. But keep pushing through it, keep sharing the idea, and keep just doing something to move the idea forward. So those are kind of general advice, specific thoughts as to what you should do next. And then as a closing comment, I was just going to say something that we do occasionally, which we find really useful, is we write down the kind of person we want to be when we're old. Definition of old is subjective. We use 60. And we say, look, this is how I want to be. And then you work backwards from that as to what you should be doing now to get there. And we find that really helps to kind of push aside all of the day-to-day minutiae. So, like, my dog's ill or the flat needs to clean or whatever. You push that aside and you focus on this is the major decision I need to make right now in order to get to my goal when I'm old. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Hi, I'm John Finnemore. I'm a senior associate at a law firm named Nabarro. We're a really big law firm and we act for lots of really big clients. But actually one of the really things that I'm particularly involved in and interested in is entrepreneurs. And we do work for really early stage startup companies. So in the last 5 years, we've done investments into 200 small businesses, some of which you'll have heard of. For instance, Graze, one of the people that we worked with many years ago, now a very big business. The Real Food Market, who run the Food Market Festival at the South Bank every Friday and Saturday, is one of our clients as well, and they came in through the Entrepreneurs Group. So I've seen loads and loads of entrepreneurial clients come in with startup ideas and businesses. And I spend a lot of time thinking about how I can do myself out of a job by saying, you don't need a lawyer to do this. So I thought I'd go through some of the key points now that you don't need a lawyer for. The internet is a fantastic resource, and as long as you use the right resources there, you can avoid using either me, the horrible expensive lawyer, or even the high street lawyer. The first tip I would give is incorporating a company. That will protect you from a liability perspective against entering into contracts with other people. So if you enter into it through the company, it's the company that's liable if things go wrong and not you personally. If you trade on your own, you're a sole trader, but using the company gives you that protection. You can set up and incorporate a company through Companies House for, I think, £10. Do not use a lawyer to do that for you. They are charging you a margin on that work. Do not use an incorporation agent. Do it yourself through Companies House. If you don't know how to, ring Companies House. They are incredibly helpful. And if you say, I haven't got a lawyer and I'm doing this myself, they will help you. The second is in terms of trademarks. The same applies. Nabarro will charge you £1,500 to do a trademark for you. The reason we do that is because we give you our experience, what you should and shouldn't do, and we take the risk of things going wrong for you. You don't need that. You can do that trademark yourself online. Again, the Intellectual Property Office are incredibly helpful. They know if you say to them, I am not a lawyer, please help me, they will do that. If you say, I'm a lawyer, please help me, they will say, no chance, get lost. So that's the distinction and the benefit you have is that. The other thing I would say is contracts. This is the thing that comes into my office from entrepreneurs most often. I signed this contract and this person hasn't performed their part of the bargain. We don't have a contract, we just did it on email. Or he and I sat in a pub, agreed the terms, I delivered and now he's not paying me. Those are all really common scenarios. And the advice I would give you is educate yourself on that. There are loads and loads of online resources that talk about do's and don'ts around entering into contracts. But we should always remember is the legal case of the cow. In the 1800s, a man wrote something on the side of a cow and agreed with someone that he would do something. And the judge said, yes, that's enforceable. It's written on the cow. We can't find the cow, but it's enforceable because it was on there in the first place. So remember that when you're agreeing to do things on emails, when you're sending letters, when you're talking to someone, you're often in a process of creating legal relations that will lead to a contract. So think very carefully about that, get stuff written down, and ideally get it signed. The other thing, particularly in the food startup sector, is to make sure that you're compliant with health and safety in the food regs. There are loads of online resources that will take you through that. Do not instruct a lawyer to help you with it. Again, the Food Safety Agency will help you and they will guide you in terms of what you do and don't need to do to get the relevant licenses to trade and sell food. The other thing I would also say when you're dealing with lawyers and dealing generally with legal relations is to make sure that what you're doing, you have evidence of. Keep records, keep your emails. I know it's easy to just put them in the deleted items in Gmail and forget about them, but even the ones from the early days are key. Keep them because they may be useful to you. There's loads of other things I could say, but I think that kind of gives you a kind of overview of how to avoid instructing me. If you would like to instruct me, I'd be grateful, but hopefully that gives you a bit of advice on how not to.
That's brilliant. That's probably the cheapest and best legal advice I've ever heard. Thank you for that. Just before we come on to the money questions, I'd love to see show of hands. People in idea stage. You haven't launched. You're not selling yet. Anyone at the idea stage? Okay, great. Those of you who have some kind of product or service and you started selling, but you're really early stage, first few months within 12 months. Great, that's about half of you. And those that are beyond that, more than a year, possibly got an employee or two, and beyond? How many of you guys? Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. All right, Clive, let's hear yours.
Hi, good morning. I'm Clive Lewis and I'm Head of Enterprise at the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. I'm going to give you my 6 tips for starting a business. We've already asked the question about how many of you think you are in business. It is important to understand with HMRC, that's Inland Revenue, they say if you're trading with an expectation to profit, you're in business, you need to do either a self-employment tax return or file accounts as a limited company if that's what you've done. So if you're trading with an expectation to profit, you're in business, there's a tax implication from that. Right, my 6 tips, and my first tip echoes something said earlier, do research. One of the hardest things for a new business to do is to set the selling price of their products. So you need to look around who your competitors are, what they're charging, and test your product. Test it against, by using pop-up shops, using markets, any other way you can, friends and family, test your product to make sure that you really think you understand the market and where your place in it is. That's point 1. Number 2, do a business plan. You may not need money, but if you do want money, finance, you will need a business plan. But more than that, a business plan is very helpful for you to run your business and to measure how successful you're being against your expectations. So if in a year's time you look back at your business plan and say, oh, that was funny, I really thought I was going to sell that much in my first year. In reality, I've sold a lot less, or I've sold a lot more. But it's useful as a guide as to how successful you're doing. Point 3, ask yourself about finance and think about cash flow. I don't want to be the depressing accountant, but most businesses, a third of businesses that start cease within 3 years. And the reason most of those cease is they run out of cash. It's not because they're not making profits, it's just their cash flow is against them. So think about cash flow and do a cash flow forecast, at least for the first 2 years, to understand where you think the money's coming from and where's it going. And the next thing then is, if you think you need finance, think about the types of finance you need. Do I need a virgin startup loan? Do I need more than that, or what? You've got to think about the various types of finance. Other types of finance may be more appropriate, but certainly I would agree with what's been said already. There's plenty of finance out there, particularly if you've got a good credit history. And that's important as well. Point 5 is keep good accounting records. Outside my job with the Institute, I run a small practice. The one thing that drives me batty is when clients come along and they've got one bank account where they've got personal transaction and business transactions. That doubles my fee, because the time I take to sort out the business and personal, it could have been much easier. Have a business bank account, keep track of your payments and receipts, always know what your balance is, and try and plot where you think it'll be in 3 months' time. People often go to a bank and expect a loan within a week. Banks take 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks to decide whether you're going to get finance. So you need to be thinking at least 2, 3 months ahead if you think you're going to need finance. So think about finance. And think about records. Record keeping vital, because if you need to go to a bank, they'll want to see accounts. So again, that helps with keeping accounts. Finally, my 6th point, particularly in your first year, don't overreach yourself. It's very easy to let your ideas run ahead of where you're actually at with your trade. So try, and particularly with that point of view of cash, don't try and go too fast, too quickly. Keep your eye on the cash flow. There's always another day to do something positive. Final piece of advice, you've heard how to do without a lawyer. We offer a version of that. We, in the Institute of Chartered Accountants, have a scheme called the Business Advice Service, and we've got 4,000 practices around the UK which will give potential new businesses a free advice session. So that could be about tax, it could be about whether to form a limited company, it could be about who do you need to notify that you've started in business, it could be payroll, I'm employing people and I don't know what to do with the payroll, it could be about auto-enrollment. Our business advice service is there, it's free, no commitment. Just go onto our website at the ICAW, find a chartered accountant, you'll find a chartered accountant close to you. You can go along and ask them the questions that are troubling you. That's all.
Brilliant. Thanks, Clive. 6 points off the top of your head. That's impressive. So this is great. We've got professionals advising on how to get free services with them, which is all very cheap, which is brilliant. And I guess we're in that lean startup world now. And the question that I've got for you guys, and then we'll open it up to everyone else, is obviously there's a lot of advantages of just getting your idea out there. And in the food industry, it's some of the most exciting space to do lean startup because it's all about sampling and tasting. But what mistakes can we avoid in this process when we're launching our businesses, or what mistakes do you often come across, or maybe you've made, Nick, that you've learnt from the most?
In terms of the lean startup model?
Yeah, or in terms of your own experience.
Yeah, I think the point that was made at the end there is to keep it focused is really, really valid. And it's really hard to do in practice because by the nature of being an entrepreneur, you go, oh, that's a good idea, I'll add that one as well. We opened a shop in Soho a few years ago that completely tanked because we thought, yeah, we'll do the alcohol market, we'll do the evening as well, and we lost hundreds of thousands of pounds and it was really stressful. And so particularly with food, you can be so niche these days. You look at what's happening in Japan, what's happening in New York. People don't open full restaurants. They open restaurants that just serve one dish. And that's a really, really good thing to do at the early stages, just to focus on one thing. And you build a really much easier operational model then for you guys, so you can really perfect it. But also the peer-to-peer marketing becomes a lot easier because you become known as the guys that do X. So I'd really support Clive's last point there, is to really, really keeping it focused. But the way that you keep yourself in check with that is a personal thing. So whether you have signs on the wall or whether you have diary notes or whatever, whether your business partner just keeps you in check, that's the hard bit, and that's the execution of it.
And how did you, with the mistake that you made in Soho, how did you get through that and bounce back?
We knew it wasn't going to work after about 4 days, which is bad. So we had a really serious conversation and we said, look, this isn't going to work. And we tried everything. I went to almost literally every door in Soho, knocking on doors saying, this is what we sell, do you want to buy it? No, cool. No, cool. We did that a lot. And then we just had to cut our losses. And then actually what we got from it was when the next round of investment came in, they were really, really pleased that we'd gone through that, because you're going to go through that. That's one of the problems that you're going to have, is to chop off an arm at some point. And they were like, we're pleased that you've been through that now, because you now know how important it is to make the right decisions at those stages. So yeah, it's pretty painful.
And legal mistakes?
Actually ties on 2 points that you've already made. First is lack of focus, and second is detail. If you have a lack of focus and are trying to do too many things, you will lose an eye for the detail, and often legal issues arise from not looking fully at what you're signing, not thinking through fully what you're doing. So actually that's the most common mistake I see, is that an eye has been taken off the ball because there's too much to do, and something has been missed, and that's often where the mistake comes from.
And examples of that would be?
The examples of that would be signing contracts, signing leases, licenses, just thinking, I've got to get this done, and signing it. And then buyer's remorse kicks in when you read the clause and you realise you're stuck with it for 3 years. That kind of thing does happen more often than you might think. And it's key to spend a bit of time focusing on that detail, which is the point that's been made.
And would your advice also then be to try and shorten those contracts or those agreements?
Try and limit the liabilities that you're taking on in the early stages as much as you can, in terms of periods of time, in terms of quantities of orders, of stock, those sorts of things. My advice would always be limit it and read the detail. Make sure that you're not agreeing to buy 1,000 cartons, but also 25,000 cartons in the small print.
Great. And then accounting mistakes?
Well, I think we're having a violent agreement here. I absolutely agree with the last two speakers. I know somebody who wanted to get into the food in business, started by setting up a cafe, but she also wanted to run training cooking courses. And unfortunately, she did the cafe first. The margins on it, because of where it is, are pretty low, and she's really got too much time involved in the cafe. Her training courses are going a bomb and they're making real money, but she cannot do enough of them to offset the money that's been sucked up by the cafe. So I think it is, keep your focus, do one thing well to start with, then think about the other things afterwards.
Great. I think one of the things I admire about everyone who works and runs a food startup is basically you have at least 2 jobs. If you're a tech startup, you're working online all day. You can manage these other bits and pieces, but you guys either are working all day, practically in the kitchen or out front, and then you're also having to go and do the office job afterwards. So that means that some of these things do get pushed down. The thing that I've seen a lot of that's really helped all of us has been, these sort of online tools that you can use. So especially accounting, bookkeeping, like Xero and cash flow, which have certainly helped me in all my startups as well. So question time, throw a hand up and I'll get you a mic. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Ricky Katari and I've got a business that looks, we've developed an alternative to the tea bags called tea sticks. It's a question for Nick.
Yeah.
How did you define your customer profile? How did you at first know what is the type of person you expect into your establishment to purchase a food item? Is it the young generation? Is it the 30s? How did you define that and how did you come up with your model?
So I guess with us, because we've got a physical site, which is probably different from yours, we look at we started by saying what's the market that we know. And I think that's always the best place to start. So we knew city professionals. So therefore you sell to them first because we knew that they wanted a quick lunch, they wanted to spend £6 to £7, they wanted quality ingredients, and they wanted friendly service, for example. So then you go, where do they work? Okay, well, they work in the city, and then where do we know within the city most specifically? So we pick a spot, and then from there you say, okay, well, what product are we going to serve within our kind of the burrito idea to these guys? And then we just looked at who's walking on the street. So you go, okay, well, Spitalfields, you've got a mix of bankers, and then you've got the kind of arty types from Brick Lane, then you've got tourists there who are going to Spitalfields as well. And then you kind of develop the product to fit those guys. So I guess if you're doing tea sticks, you're looking at what do I love doing, what do I like about the tea stick, which is the market that I know, and then where do they buy their product. So I guess if it comes down to, I don't know, say if it's Ocado, because they're more about innovation and they're about thought leaders buying new types of products. So look at what you know and look at where those guys buy their product and then develop it to suit them.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Andrew Salter. I'm a creator of a lifestyle sauce called Must Chup, which is mustard and fresh tomato sauce with a bit of a kick. Slogan is ketchup for the big kids. Nick, I'd like to ask you, where did you get your investment from?
Okay, your mustard thing sounds cool. We got the first round was from friends and family. That's going around begging anyone who'll listen. And the second round was from the same. And then we've got a round since then from industry guys. So I guess as to the general question, you have to kind of, so there's 2 types of money, I guess. One is stupid money, just guys who are going to chuck money at you. And then there's clever money. And obviously you'd rather have the latter. So I'd be writing, as we are doing now, a list of the best investors you'd like in the world. And start in the world, as in I want the CEO of Heinz to invest in my business. Start with those guys. And if you can't get those guys, then go to the next level down each time. But again, it links back to having confidence in yourself, confidence in your idea. Because if you're going, would you mind awfully lending me 500 quid? That's the kind of business you're always going to be. Whereas if you go, hey, CEO of Heinz, I want money from you, and you battle and battle and battle, then you become that guy who's got the CEO of Heinz behind him, and then whoever else is your competition is going, I'm not going to mess around with those guys because they've got big names behind them. So in short, target the best people, and if you can get the best people, great. If you can't, then go kind of constantly next level down. But it's all about confidence, and it's all about backing yourself to say, I'm good enough to get money from that person.
Great, that's kind. I mean, I am going through a virgin startup at the moment, so I'm working with a mentor at the moment. So hopefully, I'm going to get some funding through that route.
Could I just add one thing? Friends and family is a great source of finance, particularly for businesses that are yet to prove the business model. There's one thing you must do, and put and that is to put any agreement in writing. The number of people I see who say, I borrowed £500 from somebody, and now they're asking for it back. How unreasonable is that? Well, I thought it was I thought it was they were buying a share in the business. And the other way works as well. They lend you £500, you think it's a loan, but in fact they say, I want half your profits. That's buying a share of the business. You must put if you're borrowing from friends or family or they're investing in the business, agreement in writing. What is it, a loan? Is it a purchase of shares? What terms and conditions apply? If it's a purchase of shares, what share of the equity is it? Things like that need sorting out. It's the quickest way to ruin a family relationship is borrow friends and family from friends and family if you don't put the agreement in writing.
Very good advice. On the interesting, we're seeing a Virgin startup with food startups, especially in terms of the finances. A lot of them are actually going for a small loan first and talking about confidence to go out and test their idea, see what works. You know, the innocent smoothie trick, the yes/no bin, the sampling thing, and then build the confidence, validating their idea, and then coming back to get a second loan or going elsewhere to get more finance. So you don't have to just go for a big chunk. You can go out and test it. Okay, over here.
Hi, my name is Nancy. I'm setting up a healthy vending company, and I'm also wanting to set up an online version and sell snacks online. But now that you've been talking, I'm thinking maybe just focus on the vending to start with. My question is a law-based question. I think a lot of the places I'm contacting right now, they're big companies and they tend to have standard supplier contracts. Would you recommend going with those contracts and negotiate the terms of those, or should I create my own contracts and sort of like to try to limit the liability?
I think at the stage of business that you're at, I would advise starting with their contract. You need to negotiate that. You need to make sure that you read it and understand what all of it means. But actually, the cost and time that you would spend creating your own terms at this point is going to be it could be outweighed by the benefit of just using their terms. Often, they will say, oh, I'm sorry, it's our terms or nothing at all, and therefore you may as well use their terms in that instance. As the business develops, I would create your own terms and create the terms on which you want to trade. But in the first instance, I would use theirs.
Okay, thank you.
Could I add something to that? One of the most critical terms and conditions you'll probably be forced to accept if you're dealing with a larger business is their payment terms. The number of businesses that don't even talk about payment terms when they're negotiating their first contract. And then they suddenly find it's not 30-day payment terms, it's 90 or 120. And they can't manage, they can't find the cash to fund the business. So whatever payment terms you're talking about do include, whatever terms you're talking about do include payment terms in the discussions.
And if they don't pay me on time, what do I do then as a small business? If they don't pay me on time, so say my payment terms are 30 or 90 days or so, as a small business, what's in my power to do?
There's very little option. It's a trade-off. You either accept the huge volumes that can come with trading with big businesses, but the alternative then is to think about factoring and invoice discounting, and a lot of the online factors and invoice discounters will accept one invoice. Previously, traditional factors and invoice discounters would insist on having your whole sales ledger, i.e. all the customers you have. These online finance providers will accept one invoice, particularly if the invoice is to a very credit-worthy customer. So that's a quick way of getting finance back into the business if you have to accept extended payment terms.
I would do your research there as well. Ask amongst your peers as to the nature of the person, the supplier you're dealing with. Do they pay? Don't they pay? Certain retailers have very bad reputations for paying well beyond their payment terms. Do your research, ask and know what you're going to get.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Debbie. I host Burmese pop-up restaurants in London. It's called the Hush Hush Dining Club. I'm just wondering about advertising and marketing, really, and how much to spend. So far, I haven't spent anything at all, and loath to, because it's just been done by word of mouth. But I know at some point I'm going to have to do that. And just wondering whether there was a percentage that should be spent, or, how does one go about doing that?
Why are you considering it now when you've got this far without it?
Just taking the next leap forward, really. If I want to, I've got so far, but do I consider making that leap to the next level up? And how much is it all going to cost, basically?
Okay, I'll take it. I think, yeah, Ben's question is valid. So it depends what you want to achieve. So if you're saying, I want to double the number of customers, then there's a reason to do marketing. If you're saying, I want to open a second venue, then there's a reason to do marketing. If you're at capacity now, and that's what you want to achieve, then there's no point doing marketing, I wouldn't have said. I guess there's marketing is to kind of artificial marketing, to getting new customers in, and then there's kind of more organic stuff, so upselling within your existing customer base as well. So if you're at capacity and that's fine, then let's try and sell them more stuff. So let's sell them an extra kind of £2 thing at the end of the meal, which boosts your revenue. So I guess I'd say focus on what you want to achieve with the business, and then ask, is marketing required? And then once you've decided that, decide if you've got a budget for marketing. And if you haven't, these days it's not a huge problem. You just have to be clever as to using peer-to-peer marketing and going social media, etc. And again, that comes back to focus and giving people one soundbite or one little nugget of information that they can really easily pass on to others. So yeah, it all depends on what you want, basically.
I'd also add that Burmese pop-ups in London is a niche taste in a certain area, and this is where Instagram and Twitter are your best buddies, and Facebook, because you can literally go into these social media channels and find exactly who are these people, and you know them already, and then say, how can I find more of these people? And certainly through Facebook targeted ads, you can go £10 at a time, £50 at a time, £100 at a time, and really find those people, and then see whether that works or it doesn't. So start small with your spending. And don't hire someone that's going to be paying. You're going to have to pay on a retainer or anything like that. Test it online first. Great. Yeah. Let's pass the mic down this way. Got a few more minutes.
Hi. My name's Avi. I'm just starting off basically a nutritious comfort food business, and I just wondering a question about branding, basically, and what you think about hitting niche markets as opposed to hitting large markets. So basically, a lot of people, well, not a lot, a few people have told me that the angle my branding's taking is a bit risky. And
what is it?
Well, it's basically for the businesses, a nutritious comfort food business. So we're going for starting with whole food stores, but some people are saying that it might be it's a little bit out there with we're thinking of calling the company Oogly Fruit. But some people have said it sounds like, oh, it's ugly, you don't want to eat it. Then other people are saying, oh, it's funky and it sounds cool, and it fits with the logo. But I just sort of wondering what you think about going for niches as opposed to listening to everyone and then trying to change it accordingly.
I think it sounds really cool. And I think that going for a niche is a really good thing to do, in my opinion, certainly with your first business. But as long as it's a niche you understand. If you read some of Tim Ferriss's books, he loves going after little niches. Because if you're trying to go for the whole market, again, you lose focus, you get distracted, you'll try and be all things to all people. If you really understand that niche and you actually speak to them and ask them what they want and present them with options, do the lean startup thing, do you like this? What can we tweak? Do you like that? You get them involved, they feel ownership of the brand, and then you get that feedback that's so valuable to getting the execution right. So I would say niche is really, really good for your first business. I think it keeps you focused, and if you like it and it appeals to you, and you know there's a market out there for it, then push ahead with it. And I think Oogly Fruit is a really good name too.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's a good name because it's stuck already.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You want something you can remember. Okay, last question. I want to make sure it's a legal finance one because we've got branding chat after lunch, we've got marketing chat. It's a legal finance? Yeah. All right. And then we're going to eat.
Hi, I'm Gina. I'm working on an iPad app for creating the perfect dinner party to be launched soon. I do have a legal question for you, John. So when you actually incorporate a business, then you have an obligation as an employer to the directors of the company to pay minimum wage, insurance, and all that stuff. So what is the minimum requirement to be an employer, and how to best manage all the responsibilities?
You can actually create an employment relationship simply by agreeing. So if I said, come and work for me, that's an employment relationship, and that can create an employment relationship at law. So in terms of the minimum absolute requirements, I would say get something in writing. That point's been made earlier. Get something in writing and understand what you need to do. Actually, if you're employing fewer than 4 people, the statutory obligations on you are substantially lower, and actually you can deal with it in that way. Think also about consultancy. Do I actually need to employ this person, or could they be a consultant? Could they work for me on a part-time basis? Could they work for me remotely, that sort of thing? And that will limit your risk as an employer. So those are all the kind of good common sense things. There are some great templates on the internet for service contracts and employment contracts. I haven't told you that clearly. That's not. But if you go out there and find them, there's some good stuff there.
Okay.
Make sure that anyone who works for you assigns any IP they create to you. So if they're doing anything for you, particularly developers or anybody, particularly with an app, make sure that it's assigned to the company or to you, and that they can't say in 5 years' time, great app, by the way, I have all the coding and you owe me £1 million.
Okay, good, thanks.
If I could just add to that, we've talked a lot about searching the web. The biz.gov website has stacks of information. It's been redesigned to make it more accessible. I think anybody who's looking for anything should start with biz.gov, biz.gov, for a search.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. That's a lot of tips in 35 minutes. So I think that's brilliant. Even on the internet, you can't find all that in half an hour, or you can't. You get distracted. We've been invited to head next door to Testbed with your food tickets, and we're going to have a feed. But a big hand to the 3 guys, to John, Clive, and Nick.